It has recently been announced that Melanie Bush will be returning to Doctor Who for Series 14, but is there more to this return than it first seems? Okay, so for this episode of the podcast, I'm not only going to be talking about the return of Mel Bush and how I think it might be more than what they've suggested in the initial announcement, but after I've done that, I'm also going to be talking about the new 15th Doctor costume that has been spotted during filming and ranking all of the 15th Doctor's costumes we've seen so far. But obviously, before I do that, we're first going to talk about Mel's return, and I'm going to start off by reading the article that was linked in the original announcement, which is titled "Welcome Back, Bonnie Langford returns to Doctor Who as Mel Bush." And this article reads, "Star of stage and screen, Bonnie Langford will once again reprise her legendary role as Melanie Bush as she returns to Doctor Who, this time starring alongside Ncuti Gatwa, who plays the 15th Doctor in the new series. Bonnie first entered the world of Doctor Who in 1986 as the companion to the 6th and 7th Doctors, played by Colin Baker and Sylvester McCoy, both returning in a cameo role in Jodie Whittaker's final episode as the 13th Doctor. Making her West End debut at just 7 years old in Gone with the Wind, Bonnie has since gone on to lead an outstanding career. From her countless performances on both Broadway and West End, such as Chicago, 9 to 5 and Cats, to her award-winning role as Carmel Kazemi on EastEnders. Now Bonnie is back as Melanie returns for another epic adventure." And here we see the picture of her seemingly on a helipad, which is something I'll be discussing later on in this video. Bonnie Langford said, "I'm absolutely thrilled to be bringing Melanie Bush back. To be part of the exceptional cast, crew and production team led by the force of nature that is Russell T Davies is a career highlight. I'm so privileged and proud to have been a member of the Doctor Who family since the classic era, and to be included in the new generation is phenomenal." Showrunner Russell T Davies said, "Open those TARDIS doors wide because Bonnie's back. What an honour, delight and hoot to welcome back the character of Melanie after too long away. And this isn't just a cameo. Bonnie is right in the thick of the action, battling monsters and chaos and cliffhangers right at the Doctor's side, just like the old days." And then it just goes on to say about how Doctor Who is returning in 2023 with the specials and about the Disney Plus deal. Now, it's been figured out that this filming with Bonnie Langford returning as Mel Bush, which was kind of leaked through some set photos where they tried to kind of hide her from the public but didn't manage to do a great job of it, and I think that's why this press release has been made. That bit of filming seems to be for the finale, which some people are speculating is going to be a two-part finale like usual, and she's been seen running around with Ncuti Gatwa's 15th Doctor, which is also where we've seen Ncuti Gatwa's new costume, which is what I'm going to be talking about later. But I think it's very likely there's a lot more to this return than just that two-part story in Series 14, and I'm going to explain why I think that. So the first bit of evidence for this is from almost exactly a year ago when the 60th anniversary was filming with David Tennant and Catherine Tate, and you can hear Donna say to the Doctor, "What about Mel?" So as you can see, Donna seems to say, "What about Mel?" to which the Doctor replies, "Oh yeah, she's brilliant, isn't she?" Which led a lot of people to speculate that Mel might be appearing in one of the episodes of the 60th anniversary specials. Although at the time this wasn't really confirmed and was mostly just speculation, and it was a possibility that they could have been talking about a different character named Mel. But now it's seeming more and more likely that this is Mel Bush that they're talking about, and that Bonnie Langford will be appearing in at least one of the episodes during the 60th anniversary special. There was also an exclusive leak from The Mirror back in October, which also hinted at the return of Bonnie Langford as Mel Bush, saying that she was set to reprise her role for a cameo in Series 14 alongside Ncuti Gatwa, which fits a lot more with the recent announcement we've had of her being in Series 14 alongside Ncuti Gatwa. I'm not going to read this whole article like the last one because this one's been out for a while, so some people have probably already read it themselves or heard about it, and it has now basically been confirmed because of the official announcement that she will be in Series 14, which is what this was talking about. So from this and the 60th anniversary filming from last year, it seems that Bonnie Langford will be appearing in both the 60th anniversary specials and a couple of episodes of Series 14. But I think there's even more to it than that, as in November last year, random Doctor Who tweets on Twitter found what looks like a unit helipad in the back lot of Wolf Studios, which is the studios for Bad Wolf, who is producing Doctor Who this time round, whilst they were randomly browsing Google Maps. And and this location looks very similar to where Mel appears to be stood in the announcement image that they took of her. So what I think this means is that when we are going to see Mel Bush in both the 60th anniversary specials and Series 14, there is a chance that she has been recruited by Kate Stewart, which we saw at the end of Power of the Doctor, to work for UNIT, and that she'll be working for UNIT for these episodes that she appears in. But once again, that's not everything, as of course there's also been a lot of rumours that the first main Doctor Who spin-off we will get during RTD's second era will be a UNIT spin-off. Now previously it's been speculated that obviously it will be headed up by Kate Stewart, played by Gemma Redgrave, which I still absolutely think is going to be true, and she's also clearly appearing in Series 14 and possibly the 60th anniversary specials, although I don't know how likely that part is. But people were speculating that she could be joined by some other companions, such as Martha Jones, or maybe Ace and Tegan, who we saw in Power of the Doctor, maybe Eve Miles coming back as Gwen Cooper from Torchwood. Also, whilst I'm here, I think it's worth mentioning that Freema Agyeman, who plays Martha Jones, when recently asked if she was involved in the 60th anniversary specials, gave a very intriguing answer, to which she said she doesn't know how to answer that question and we'll just have to wait and see.
I don't know what to say. I think that, let's just wait and see what happens. Sorry.
Which seems to suggest that she could be appearing in the 60th anniversary specials, or at least returning to Doctor Who at some point in the near future, which makes it a lot more likely that she could appear in the UNIT spin-off if that is happening. And those cast members could absolutely still be part of this UNIT spin-off, but now it's seeming more and more likely, especially if Mel is working for UNIT, that she will also be a part of this team for this rumoured UNIT spin-off if it does happen, which is seeming more and more likely. Now, it does also kind of give off the same vibes as School Reunion from Series 2, where we see the return of beloved classic Doctor Who companion Sarah Jane Smith in that episode, which then also led into a spin-off for the first RTD era, that being Sarah Jane Adventures. So it is almost giving off the same vibe. However, I personally haven't seen any episodes with Mel in it. I haven't watched a whole bunch of Classic Who, and I've never seen an episode that she's in. But from what I understand, Mel is not as much of a beloved Classic Who companion as Sarah Jane Smith was. As far as I'm aware, they almost resorted her character to just being a screaming damsel in distress, and almost made her a one-dimensional character from what I've heard. So it seems like this return of Mel Bush could be almost some sort of redemption to her character of some kind, and it could be seen as the writers giving her another chance to actually be a really well fleshed out character and give her the chance that she should have had back in Classic, instead of just being resorted to a one-dimensional damsel in distress that was screaming all the time, which I think is a really nice opportunity to give Bonnie Langford, as although I haven't seen her in anything personally, she's clearly a very talented actor from all the stuff that's been mentioned in the article that she's been in, especially with them also seemingly getting her to work for UNIT, likely making use of computer skills that I've heard she has recently that I assume were not very well utilized back in the Classic era of the show after they, like I said, turned her into a one-dimensional character. So I think it's really nice that they're giving her this opportunity. And also the spin-off that they're kind of setting up with her if she is part of UNIT is very different to the spin-off that they set up with Sarah Jane, as Sarah Jane wasn't really part of any organization. She was just a journalist working on her own, and obviously then got involved with the kids at Bannerman Road with Luke, Clyde, Ronnie, Maria. Whereas this spin-off, she's probably going to have already been working for UNIT, or maybe we'll see where she started to work for UNIT, and she's going to be part of a bigger team, with possibly the main focus actually being around Kate Stewart, and it not just being, the Mel Bush adventures or something like that. So although it is almost a rehash of what RTD did in his first era in Series 2 with Sarah Jane, it does seem a little bit unique in that sense, and not like he's just doing the exact same thing again, which is nice. So like I said, I haven't actually seen any episodes with Bonnie Langford as Mel Bush in Classic Show. I might get around to doing that before we actually see her return, but I do think there is a lot more to this return than the initial announcement says, and they're just wanting to still keep that under wraps because it's not properly leaked as much yet as them seeing her on set for Series 14, and the UNIT spin-off is still mostly just speculation, and there's obviously no confirmation that she's in the 60th anniversary specials yet, although it is seeming quite likely. But as I said, during this filming with Ncuti Gatwa and Bonnie Langford for the Series 14 finale, where we see both of them together, we have also got a look at another of Ncuti Gatwa's 15th Doctor costumes, further cementing the idea that he's going to have probably a new costume for every story. In this new costume, he appears to be wearing a plain white t-shirt, some jeans, and a black leather jacket, which is quite the departure from what his standard look seems to be, although I suppose he doesn't really have that consistent of a look throughout anyway. But I at least thought maybe like the orange and the like brown jackets and stuff like that were going to kind of be a through line for his costumes, besides obviously the costumes that appear to be one-offs for a particular era that they've gone back in time to, such as the 60s one and the Regency outfit, which just seemed to be more the Doctor and Ruby dressing appropriate for the time, just maybe for a little bit of fun or to blend in a little bit more. So this one does seem a lot more like a bit of a departure, but I still don't hate it. I think Ncuti looks really good in it, but it does seem a lot less Doctor-y and a lot less consistent with the other outfits. So now I'm going to get on with ranking them, and I've pretty much said what I need to say about that outfit, so I might as well put that one in the tier list first so I don't have to repeat myself later on. So for what I've said so far, although I don't hate the outfit, I think I'm first going to put this one in C tier just for now, because like I said, it doesn't seem as consistent with those other ones, and there doesn't seem to be as much more of a reason for it to be as inconsistent with the other ones like other outfits are. But I also don't hate it, so I might move it up a little bit further on once I've ranked all the other ones. So for the rest of the outfits, I'm going to kind of try and go in the order that I'm pretty sure they were announced in. And by the way, I should be able to have this tier list linked in the description. I did have to make it myself, but it should be publicly available on the Tier Maker website still. So if you want to do your own ranking of these, you should be able to find that in the description. So I'm first going to start off with the officially announced costume reveal for Ncuti Gatwa, which although I do personally think it looks pretty good, and I think Ncuti looks great in it, it doesn't look that much like a Doctor-y outfit. I know I've heard a lot of people describe it as very H&M, and I think some of the items might actually be from H&M, and it does definitely look that way. I'm really liking the orange on him that he seems to be wearing throughout a lot of the costumes. But yeah, this outfit does seem very like H&M shop bought, and it doesn't actually feel that Doctor-y to me, but I still like it. I know there has been rumors that this is the costume that's also going to have a hat involved in it, but I'd have to wait till we see that to actually judge it with that in mind. But yeah, for now, I think I'm going to have to put this in B tier. I might move it up to A tier at some point, we'll see. Because like I say, I don't hate it, it just doesn't feel entirely that Doctor-y for me. I mean, the general silhouette of it kind of does with the long coat, but besides that, it does feel very H&M shop bought, and for lack of a better term, it doesn't seem as quirky, I guess, as other Doctor Who outfits are. And there's definitely better outfits that we've seen him in since then than this officially announced one. So moving on to the outfit that we've probably had the least good of a look at, we just have this one, maybe two blurry photos from very far distance of Ncuti in this outfit, but he appears to be wearing some sort of long kind of orange raincoat, I think. I've also heard people describe it as yellow, but to me it looks orange, and that would make sense considering orange seems to be a pretty consistent theme in this Doctor's costumes, at least when it comes to his main costumes and not his one-off period appropriate outfits. And he also appears to be wearing a sort of red burgundy-ish kind of beanie, which, trying to imagine this in my mind's eye, what it would look like with a more detailed image, I think it would actually look really nice and possibly better than the officially announced outfit, and probably more Doctor-like. But because we've only got these really low-res, blurry, at a distance images of this costume, it's really difficult to make an actual judgment on this because it might end up looking worse than I'm imagining it in my head. So I don't want to put it above the officially announced costume yet, just in case when we get a proper official look at this costume, even if that ends up being when we actually see the show proper, it might be worse than I'm imagining in my head. But there's a possibility, if we had got an official image by this point, that I would put it in A tier because it does look like it's going to be better than the officially announced costume reveal. Now we get to the costume that seems to be what the Doctor is wearing for the Christmas special, his first episode as the 15th Doctor, where he's got this long brown leather jacket, some blue trousers on, some trainers, and once again this orange shirt. This is definitely the 15th Doctor's best outfit that we've seen so far. I think it's possibly one of my favorite Doctor costumes of all time. I mean, I should probably wait till we see it actually in an official official image and in the show to actually make that decision, but I don't think I'd be wrong in thinking that this is one of the best Doctor costumes of all time in my opinion. And I've never cosplayed as a Doctor before, but if I did, this would definitely be one of the ones that I'd be wanting to try and do. Now, like I said, it does seem like the 15th Doctor is possibly going to wear a different outfit for every story, at least for series 14, which means that this first Christmas special, Ncuti Gatwa's first full episode as the Doctor, might be the only time we see this costume. But if he is going to wear any costume again for another episode and wear a costume more than once, I would really like it to be this one, even if we don't get to see it for a second time in series 14, maybe just in series 15, or if he has more of a consistent outfit or just a couple of outfits in series 15. I really want to see this one return and not just be a one-off, because I think it is one of the best Doctor costumes we've ever got, like I said. Although I suppose if any outfit is going to be reused more than once, I guess it would probably be the officially announced costume reveal one, because that's what they use to reveal his costume. But I would much prefer it to be this one if he had like a main outfit. So I'm obviously going to put this in S tier. I'd be crazy not to. Okay, now we get on to the swinging 60s with this outfit that's kind of like a blue pinstripe suit, and somehow he's got an afro in this episode as well, which I don't know how he's got that. I don't know if he's just got a wig on. Obviously, I think Ncuti actually has a wig on in real life for this to work, but in terms of in the show, in universe, I don't know if the Doctor just wears a wig, if he's able to grow his hair out using some regeneration ability we don't know about, or if they've just been trapped in like the 60s for a little while, or even if this whole outfit and getup is something that's outside of his control and he's not done it himself. Maybe Jinx Monsoon's character's done it to him or something and trapped him in this outfit and in this time period. For all we know, that could be what's happened. But either way, this is also one of the best outfits we've seen Ncuti in, and he pulls it off really well. I do have a feeling it's only going to be used for this one episode, which I am fine with, because it's clearly there for a reason, for a purpose, because they're in the 60s, or even, like I say, maybe he's not even chosen to wear it and they've just been forced into this time period in this outfit by some other character. But I'm perfectly fine, as much as I like this costume, for it to just appear in the one episode, because it's clearly doing that for a purpose and it's there for a reason. But it does definitely deserve A tier. It's definitely better than some of the other costumes that we've seen. And similarly, now we get on to the Regency era costume that we've seen, with the photos of the Doctor and Jonathan Groff's character and Millie Gibson all in that photo shoot in that fancy house on the stairs. This one is probably my least favorite outfit, but once again, it's kind of doing the same thing as the 60s one, where it's clearly there to serve a purpose. The Doctor and Ruby are likely just wearing it either to fit in or just to have a bit of fun whilst they're in that time period. And so I don't hate it or anything. It's obviously there for a reason. I just don't think it personally looks as good as any of the other ones. For now, I think that is how I want to leave it. That looks pretty good to me. Like I say, the kind of raincoat beanie outfit maybe could go up in the rankings when we get a better look at it, because the way I'm picturing it in my head, it will deserve an A ranking, but it might not look exactly how I'm thinking it does in my head, and we'll need to wait till we get a proper look at that before I can make a judgment on it. I assume this is all the costumes we're maybe going to see. Maybe there's some where they've been filming like in studio where he's wearing a different outfit, but it's probably going to be a while till we see another costume now, especially considering the last one we've seen is, I believe, for the last filming block and for the finale of series 14. So as far as I'm aware, this probably is all the outfits for this series, and it would be a little bit wild if there were even more outfits in this, because this is already a lot of outfit variations for one Doctor for one series of the show. So as far as I'm aware, this probably is all of them, and I think I'm pretty happy with the ranking I've done so far. And like I say, the one I've put in S tier, the Christmas special one, is one of my favorite Doctor costumes of all time, not just for the 15th Doctor, but for the Doctor as a whole, and I think he looks great in it, so I hope we see that one return. But let me know what you think in the comments, if you agree with my ranking, if you disagree with any of these rankings. Let me know what your favorite 15th Doctor costume is so far, and what your least favorite is if you want. I'm going to be releasing some videos in the next couple of weeks on everything we know for all the individual episodes for the 2023 60th anniversary specials. They're all going to get their own videos for each of the 3 episodes, and then I'll probably do a compilation at the end for all of the 2023 specials, including the Christmas special featuring Ncuti Gatwa as his first full-time appearance as the 15th Doctor. So subscribe to the channel if you don't want to miss that, and thanks for watching. Over the past week or so, it's been confirmed that previous Doctor Who composer Murray Gold will be returning to the show, alongside a few more filming images from Series 14. But is Murray's return a good idea? Okay, so before I get into the main topic of this podcast, I first want to talk about a couple of other bits of news to do with Doctor Who. The first of which is the alleged Fortnite leaks that have been seen on Twitter, which I guess somebody must have hacked Fortnite or something like that, just to see that there's allegedly going to be a collaboration between Doctor Who and Fortnite, allegedly probably happening some point in November, maybe even earlier. Now, some of you may be thinking, this could just be some fake photoshops that somebody has made, and I did think that when I first saw it, but the person that's been tweeting about this on Twitter, which is iFireMonkey, they're not a Doctor Who page, they're a Fortnite Leaks page. The main thing they talk about is Fortnite Leaks, not Doctor Who. So they wouldn't really have much of a reason to fake a Doctor Who specific collaboration. And they probably don't, as far as I'm aware, know that much about Doctor Who themselves personally anyway. They've just found out about this because they look at Fortnite leaks. So that does lend a bit of credence to this idea that this could be legit. But what this seems to cover is there's basically, as far as I can tell, going to be an event that's called Unit Code Red, which allows you to unlock different Doctor Who items that you can use in Fortnite. So I'm going to go over a few of the rewards and stuff that they've talked about on Twitter, but it's going to be very brief. So there's a list of things that you're allegedly going to get with this Unit Code Red event. First one being a Star Cruise glider, which I'm assuming will be Beep the Meep's ship, the Star Cruiser. I'm assuming that's Beep the Meep's ship. A wrap and loading screen that haven't been found or announced or whatever yet. A TARDIS emoticon, 3D glasses spray, which makes sense because of the 10th Doctor's 3D glasses. A banner, another one that just says an emote. I think it might be the Sonic Screwdriver emote, actually. I think I've seen a picture of that. One back bling, which is a backpack that you, in Fortnite, back bling is a backpack. I'm not sure if we know what the back bling is for this particular event. I can see something here that looks like the things that they use to travel between the parallel worlds in Doomsday. So maybe that's the back bling. I can see that in here. I think that's what that's meant to be anyway. So maybe that's what the back bling is. There's also another one showing an image of a Beep the Meep spray, which looks really cool. And in terms of the outfits or skins that you can get, it's obviously going to be the 14th and 15th Doctor. So David Tennant and Ncuti Gatwa's Doctors. There's another one that also says the glider is going to be the TARDIS. And I've seen some people speculating that you're going to hang on to the TARDIS kind of like in the opening of Day of the Doctor, which I think is a really cool idea. There's going to be a psychic paper emote, and the pickaxes allegedly are going to be the Sonic staff, which I think I've seen an image of somewhere, but I haven't got that one up on here, which is basically just seems to be the Sonic screwdriver that David Tennant's been using in the 60th anniversary set pictures, but they've elongated it to work as a pickaxe. And there's also going to be the Dalek manipulator arm, so the Dalek plunger as another pickaxe. There might be a few other things that I've missed, because I know there's another image that shows those pickaxes and other things. But the last thing with this that I want to talk about is that there's a script which I think is meant to be for a trailer that people think is going to be airing via this Fortnite event, which seemingly refers to the 14th Doctor, at least, as the Edge Doctor, or it refers to somebody in it as the Edge Doctor, and people are assuming that this must be the 14th Doctor. So this does actually have, it tells us something possibly about the 60th anniversary special itself, and that the Edge might have something to do with the 60th anniversary specials, which I first thought when people were thinking about this way back when we saw the brief shot of Ncuti in the trailer. I thought it was very unlikely that we'd get the Edge, because Russell is writing these episodes, and the Edge was featured in Power of the Doctor, which is a Chibnall episode, and Russell, as far as we know, is probably writing the episodes when Power of the Doctor hadn't come out yet, but he had seen Power of the Doctor early, so it is possible that maybe he'd already been writing it or coming up with some ideas. He saw Power of the Doctor and he thought, okay, I can implement this in some way, maybe as a way to explain why David Tennant's back. So it's not completely out of the realm of possibility that he hasn't taken a little bit of inspiration from Power of the Doctor, but it is interesting that we'll be seeing the Edge again so soon, although I guess it makes sense with the whole thing being about, the regeneration going wrong. So if this is real, which I'd like to believe most of this is real, considering this guy is not a Doctor Who guy, then that's really cool to find out. And, the 14th Doctor may also be referred to as the Edge Doctor. Okay, so the next bit of news that I want to talk about before getting into the Murray Gold stuff is about Jinx Monsoon's character being announced and the costume reveal with that. So obviously, at first, she was announced to be playing a villain with just a generic photo shoot of her in just one of her normal drag outfits, I assume. But not long after that, we got another photo shoot with her, which had a couple of images in it of her in her villain outfit just before she went on to do a bit of filming for Series 14. And this villain outfit seemed to have, it seems to be based on like a piano, like there's piano keys on like the lapels or the collar or whatever. And so this has led some people to believe that they might be doing a musical episode for Series 14, which I'm going to get more into later on. But for now, I just want to talk about what people have been speculating about this character specifically rather than the episode. Because I've seen some people speculating that this could be the same character that Neil Patrick Harris is playing in the 60th anniversary specials. And I think people are thinking that either Jinx Monsoon could also be like the Celestial Toymaker, which they think Neil Patrick Harris is, or maybe they're just thinking that they're the same character, but it's like maybe just some other Time Lord that isn't the Celestial Toymaker or something like that. And I think this might be because of the musical elements and because we've seen Neil Patrick Harris's character dancing and singing on set with David Tennant. And there is also a shot in the trailer where he's like throwing the petals. It does look like it could be from like a bit of a singing and dancing number in the 60th anniversary. So it does seem like Neil Patrick Harris could possibly be like singing and dancing as well. So I think that's led some people to believe that this could be the same character, which like I definitely think it's a possibility. But I personally do hope it's a different character, or at least if it is the same character, I do hope it's like a new character instead of the Celestial Toymaker. Because I like the idea of the Celestial Toymaker being in the 60th anniversary specials, because, you know, it's an anniversary special, so it's perfectly fine for old characters, especially some classic characters that we've not seen in the new series to show up. But I don't want that character to then immediately return in the next series as well, unless maybe they are trying to have them as like a new replacement for the Master, where they're like the recurring villain that shows up all the time. But I just personally want this character to also be somebody new. And sure, maybe like the Celestial Toymaker does do a little bit of a singing and dancing number or whatever in the 60th anniversary specials, but not much. And then this character could actually be specifically focused on like music and turning things into a musical, making like forcing the characters to sing and dance outside of their control or something. Whereas Neil Patrick Harris just might do a little bit of singing and dancing for fun or something like that as the Celestial Toymaker or whatever character they're playing. Because I personally want more new characters instead of just bringing back the same characters immediately after they've just been in an episode. So getting on to more of the stuff about the possible musical episode with Jinx Monsoon, we've seen some more images from filming, some official images this time, of the 14th Doctor and Millie Gibson's Ruby Sunday in some 60s outfits. Now, first, some people had just spotted them on set and taken a few pictures of them on their phones or whatever, but not long after that, we got some official looks at that. And so, interestingly, the Doctor is in this 60s outfit that looks very different, especially in terms of colours, because there's no, like, orange in there, to their normal Doctor outfits that we've seen, which I'm going to talk about later on as well. And most interestingly, he also has a bit of an afro, which at this moment in time, we're unsure as to how he actually is going to get that. But I do have a theory on that personally. Now, some people have speculated that this could be that they get trapped in the 60s and they've lived there for a long time, so his hair just naturally grows out. I think that's a possibility, but I don't personally think that's the case. And as well, some people have speculated that maybe it's a wig. Like, obviously it's probably a wig in real life, but some people have speculated in the show, like, the actual reason for it is the Doctor just puts a wig on, which again, that could also be the case, but that's not personally what I think it is. I think this could feed into the theory that this is a musical episode where Jinx Monsoon's character has the power to force characters to like sing and dance outside of their control, and that maybe they're able to like alter the clothing or perception, maybe even the location of these characters. So maybe Jinx Monsoon's character has trapped them in the 60s and changed their appearance and is forcing them to do things outside of the control, including singing and dancing. And Ruby and the Doctor have got to figure out why this is happening to them and who's doing it to them, and find Jinx Monsoon's character, which I think would be a really cool idea. But, you know, there's also always the possibility that maybe the Doctor has another sort of regeneration ability that we don't know of, where he's able to just force his hair to grow out a bit or something. There's also apparently been a piano that's been on set with this, where they think there's going to be like a piano drop scene or something like that. And I think there's a body double for Millie Gibson who plays the piano. So maybe Millie Gibson knows how to play the piano, and that somehow factors into this. But some people have also speculated that it is meant to be also Jinx Monsoon's piano double, but I'm pretty sure it said it was Millie Gibson's on like a sign on a trailer or something like that. So yeah, it does seem very possible that we might be getting a musical episode. And I'm not the biggest fan of musicals in general, but I think I like when episodes do something different, and especially with this season, it seems like it's going to be very campy again, especially with Jinx Monsoon's costume and all that. And so I'm excited to see what it's like. I'm not against the idea. I think it'll be very interesting to see, even if it's just a bit of an interesting, experiment that they never do again. Okay, we've also seen some more filming for what seems to be the Christmas special that had been filming at the start of this year. So at the start of this year, we'd seen Millie Gibson filming in, I believe it was in Bristol, on a street, and we'd seen the scene where she comes across the TARDIS for the first time and stuff like that. But at that point, I think Ncuti Gatwa was filming Sex Education, so he wasn't there at that time. So they seem to have gone back to that street in Bristol, done it up to look like Christmas again, and are filming Ncuti's bits over there. So because of this, we've got a better look at the costume that we'd seen Ncuti in the graveyard for the Christmas filming earlier on in this year, which is something I'm going to get into in a little bit. But we also seem to have got a look at Ncuti using the sonic screwdriver. We haven't necessarily seemed to have got a look at the actual sonic screwdriver himself. We've just seen a video of him like pointing the sonic screwdriver at a door to open it. But there has been another photo of Ncuti holding something in his hand, which it doesn't look like a sonic screwdriver. So it looks like it's probably just like another device, like what the 10th Doctor used to do all the time, where he made devices to like scan things, or it's like an alien device for something for the episode or something like that. But it is also possible, even though it looks very different to a sonic screwdriver, that this could be the sonic screwdriver and it's just had quite a drastic redesign, which I'm excited to see if that is the case. But like I said, it's probably not the sonic screwdriver because it doesn't really look like one, but who knows, it could absolutely be that. Okay, so like I also said, we got a better look at the costume, which is the one with like the orange and purple kind of shirt that he has, and the blue trousers, the cool trainers, and the long leather brown jacket, which for me personally is definitely my favourite Ncuti Gatwa 15th Doctor. I might have been calling him the 14th Doctor earlier on in this video. Hopefully I haven't done that. Of the 14th Doctor and Millie Gibson's Ruby Sunday 15th Doctor costume, and honestly it might be one of my favourite Doctor Who costumes, possibly the best one that I've seen ever. So I hope that he wears this most out of all the costumes, which it seems like he might be because it's one of the ones we've seen him filming in the most. But obviously this isn't the one they officially announced his costume reveal in, and it does seem like he's wearing quite a vast range of costumes throughout this first series, because we've seen this one, we've seen the officially revealed one, although we haven't really seen him filming in that one. We've just had the picture of him in it. We've obviously seen the 60s one, although I assume that's going to be a bit of a one-off. But we've also seen barely a very, very, very blurry and pixelated picture of him on some cliffs at some point, where he's got like this red or like burgundy kind of beanie on and a long orange coat on that almost seems a bit like a raincoat, and that one looks really cool. And I hope we get some more high definition, maybe even official pictures of that one soon, because we really couldn't make it out completely. But yeah, this one that he's been filming the Christmas special in definitely looks like my favorite one so far, and it seems like because it's the Christmas special, it's probably going to be his first main costume. But he does look like he's going to get a lot of costume changes, at least just in this very first series as well. But maybe this is just what the 15th Doctor's going to be like in terms of costumes for his whole era. He's just going to kind of have a Peter Capaldi approach to it, where he has different costumes every episode, which I think would be very cool. Now, there is a few other things that have come up about Series 14 recently. Some stuff with like concept art that I'm not going to show here just in case, they want me to take it down or something like that. But I am planning on doing an updated version of the Everything We Know About Series 14 video soon, because I've done one video about that so far and it's very outdated now. It was before we even knew Millie Gibson was going to be the companion, and we was thinking, I think it's Rose Ayling Ellis, we was thinking she was going to be the companion. So I do need to do an updated version of that to talk about a lot of things that I've not really mentioned yet, like the stuff with Roger Ap William and all that stuff. I haven't made a video about any of that yet, so I will be working on one of those in the next couple of weeks or month or so. So look out for that and subscribe if you're not already, so that you don't miss that. And I will also be doing an updated version of the 60th anniversary or 2023 specials at some point as well. Okay, so in case you've been living under a rock, we've also had the big news in the past week that Murray Gold, the former composer for Doctor Who from the first RTD era and the Moffat era of the show, will apparently be returning for RTD2.
We are recording music with the National Orchestra of Wales for Doctor Who 2023, or RTD2. I'm Murray Gold, and I'm the composer on Doctor Who.
And honestly, like a lot of people, I've got mixed feelings on this. I love Murray Gold's music. I get that obviously I Am the Doctor started to get overused at a certain point, but I don't think that was down to him. I think that was more of an editing choice, or, you know, the producers were saying, you know, they knew it was very popular and they wanted it in there more. So I don't blame him for that. But besides that, I do love Murray Gold's music. I think it is great. I'm not saying I don't like Sagan Akinola's music. I know I'm repeating a lot of things that everybody else has said on this so far, but Sagan's music was very different, and it was more like ambient music, which I know I've heard a lot of people saying, and I think that does work really well. So I like them both for different reasons, but there's lots of Murray Gold tracks that I actually like know and really like because they're actually like properly in your face and really bombastic, which isn't necessarily the best way that you're meant to kind of compose music for a show, but I can't help but love those tracks. And so I'm very excited for him to return personally, especially for the 60th, which makes sense because obviously Donna's coming back, and so we'll hear more of Donna's theme. And obviously with David Tennant coming back, we might get like a bit of a similar version of the 10th Doctor's theme for the 14th Doctor's theme, if that kind of makes sense. And obviously we might get a new version, well, we will get a new version of the opening titles theme, which, you know, with it being the 60th and it being David Tennant and Catherine Tate, maybe it will be similar to that of the first RTD era theme, just for the 60th, or something like that. And we've got a quote from Doctor Who magazine where Murray was asked, now that David Tennant and Catherine Tate are reprising their magical double acts, can we expect some musical callbacks? To which Murray said, it's inevitable that you're going to get the odd reminiscence. For example, there's a little bit of Donna's theme as soon as we hear her. There's a bit of the Doctor's theme in there too, but they're not old recordings. All the music that I've done so far is brand new, even when it's evoking an older theme. Then I think for Shooty, it's important that the music feels brand new, which I think just sounds really good. Obviously, it makes sense to have a bit of a reprise of those themes that we heard during that era, with it being the same characters coming back or the same actors from that era. And that'll be really exciting, especially considering they're not just going to obviously put the exact same song in there. He's going to do like a bit of new version for each of those themes. And I think that makes perfect sense for an anniversary special that's celebrating the past and these characters. But in that, he obviously also stated that he's going to be doing music for Series 14, and this has also been confirmed by Russell T Davies on Instagram, where he seems to confirm that Murray Gold will also be doing the music for Series 14, which is the aspect that I'm a bit mixed on. Like I said, it obviously makes sense for the 60th. It's an anniversary, it's celebrating the past. Of course, get Murray Gold back for it. It just makes sense. But I do feel like it's a little bit unfortunate that we're not going to get to hear music from someone new for Series 14 and beyond. We are definitely getting a lot of new talent for Series 14, you know, the casting's all new, we've got like mostly all new directors, there's probably going to be some new writers in there hopefully alongside Russell T Davies, and so there's absolutely some new stuff going on in the RTD2 era. But I think hiring a new composer would have made the intent to try and make something new and move forward even more obvious. And so just going back and hiring Murray Gold again for Series 14, it's a bit of an odd choice in my opinion. And it makes me worry even more that this second era isn't going to be as different as we might want it to be and as I hope it would be. And it does make me worry that we might be treading a bit too much old ground again, which I really hope isn't the case. I really just hope they haven't come back just to do basically the exact same thing again. And I think Council of Geeks in their new video about this, I think they put it really well as well.
And again, it's possible, and I'm going to hold on to that hope, but that's the thing. It's now a hope. It was faith. I had faith he wasn't going to just try and recapture and redo the same thing. I don't have faith anymore. I have hope. But that's a lot more fragile.
So I really hope that I am wrong with this. You know, he did say in that quote about Shooty that he is going to do something new for that. And if you listen to his music in other shows that he's worked on since, even with Russell, you know, they are very different, and he does know how to do something differently. So it's absolutely possible he could still make something that sounds new and doesn't just sound like the first RTD era. But I just personally think it would have been really nice to give that role to somebody new, and that would have just been, you know, the job of a lifetime for whoever would have got that. So it does just seem weird that after, you know, the Chibnall era, we have literally gone back to almost the exact same team for the RTD2 era, besides the cast and the directors and possibly some new writers that might come on board. But at the same time, maybe we will end up having the perfect mix of new and old people on the crew. I just think the composer would have been a nice one to give to somebody new. But there is a positive thing that might come out of the fact that Murray Gold is returning, as quite infamously, the soundtrack for Series 10, which was by Murray Gold, still has yet to be released, even though it was from like 2017 or something like that. But since Sega Akinola came on board, that soundtrack has never been released. And so with Murray Gold returning, a lot of people were excited as they thought this might be the time that we finally get the Series 10 soundtrack, which at this point has been like a bit of a joke that it hasn't released. Like, people have made a lot of jokes about it, and there's even like whole Twitter accounts about it and stuff. But with this newest issue of Doctor Who magazine, Murray Gold was asked about the Series 10 soundtrack and if it will be released. And in this interview, he has confirmed that he will make sure the Series 10 album does get released. He hasn't said exactly when or that he's been told that he can do it or anything yet. He just said that he is going to try and make sure that that does happen. So there is some good news to come out of this. And like I said, I am excited for him to return. So this isn't the only good news. I'm very excited to hear some more new music from him, a new version of the theme, some new versions of older themes like the Donna's theme in the 60th. And like I said, I do think it is a perfect idea to bring him back for the 60th anniversary. I just do think it would have been really nice to have somebody new for Series 14. But let me know what you think. Are you glad that he's come back in general? Do you think we should have had somebody new, or do you think we should have had somebody new at least for Series 14 like I do? And what are you most excited to see from Murray Gold? Is it these new versions of old themes, or is it specifically the Series 10 soundtrack? With David Tennant returning as our main Doctor for the 60th anniversary year of Doctor Who, I thought now would be the perfect time to rank every David Tennant era episode. And so for this brand new episode of the podcast, that's exactly what I'm going to do. Okay, so before I start on this video, I first just want to point out that this video is inspired by a video that Crispy Pro recently made on his channel, where he used the exact same tier list. So I just thought I'd give credit for that, just so people don't think that I'm like stealing his idea or whatever. And I will also have his channel and his video linked in the description of this video, along with this tier list that we both used. I'm also aware that whoever made this tier list hasn't put all of the episodes in the correct order, so I have got IMDb up on the side to make sure that I go through these in the correct order they were released, because I think that's probably the best way to do something like this. And obviously this is just my opinion, so if you disagree with anything I say, you know, let me know what you think in the comments, what you agree with, what you disagree with, and just bear in mind this is obviously my opinion. So obviously, with this being David Tennant episode ranking, we're going to start with David Tennant's first proper full episode as the Doctor, and the first Christmas special of the new era, the Christmas Invasion. Now, I haven't rewatched this episode in a long time, but I remember it being a really fun episode, and it's probably one of the best Christmas specials from memory, especially of the RTD era anyway. But David Tennant himself doesn't really show up that much in this episode. It's mostly a bit of a Dr. Light story, which is kind of odd to say it's his first episode, and we mostly just see him like lying in bed for most of the episode. I'm not saying I like disagree with the choice. I think it is a good idea, and when we do finally get to see him at the end, I think he's really great in it. I think the Sycorax as well are very interesting villains. I think they're one that I'd really like to see come back at some point. I know Doctor Who magazine has recently hinted at the fact that we're going to get somebody returning from 2005, so it's absolutely possible that it could be the Sycorax. But I think, you know, Trinity Wells is more likely for that. But for now, I'm going to put Christmas Invasion at good. So the next episode is the first episode of Series 2, which is New Earth. For me personally, I don't necessarily think this episode is bad or anything, but I don't think it's like the best opening episode for a series. And if you know me, you know I'm not the biggest fan of Series 2 as a whole anyway. It's a really interesting one to see the 10th Doctor and Rose interacting for the first time properly, or like actually going on a proper adventure with each other where they're both actually there, because for a lot of the episode, they keep like swapping bodies, or like Cassandra's in one of their bodies and it's not actually them, and they get to do like a bit of fun comedy with it, which, you know, like I said, it's fun, but it's not like something that I like loved or anything. And I honestly don't remember too much from this episode, and I don't really think of it that often, so I think I'm going to just put it in okay. Similarly with Tooth and Claw, I don't really remember a whole lot from this episode standing out to me. I remember it's got a really interesting cold open that was kind of very strange but also very fun, and I honestly don't even remember how it even plays into the rest of the episode. I think we get to see the 10th Doctor and Rose's banter a lot more in this, because there's the whole thing of Rose trying to do her Scottish accent at the start of the episode, and I think this just really shows their chemistry in this. And it's a bit of an interesting story with it being about like a werewolf that ends up being like an alien, but like I said, I honestly don't remember too much from this episode that actually stands out to me, so I think I'm also gonna put this in okay. Now we're getting on to School Reunion, which is a lot better than the past couple of episodes. I still don't think I love it as much as everybody else does, but it's great to see Sarah Jane come back. And I love the scene where Sarah Jane finds the TARDIS and realizes that she's finally been reunited with the Doctor. And I also love the scene where we first meet Sarah Jane and she has no idea that the 10th Doctor is the Doctor. And it's great to see, for the first time in the new era, the current companion realizing that the Doctor's obviously had a lot of companions before in the past, and that Rose isn't the first one. And I think Rose and Sarah Jane have some great moments together in this episode. I also think Anthony Head is a great villain in this, but the Krillitanes themselves, I don't really remember much of what they do and what they're all about, and I don't remember them standing out that much to me. But getting to see Sarah Jane and also getting to see K9 in this does make it better than the past couple of episodes that I've been discussing. So I'm going to put this one in good, I think, for now. Okay, so now we're getting on to Stephen Moffat's first episode of the David Tennant era. Now, Stephen Moffat was basically like at his peak during the RTD era, so this one is also, like a lot of the others, really good. But off the top of my head, I think this might be possibly the weakest one that Stephen Moffat wrote in the RTD era. I might be wrong, and I'm sure we'll get to some later on, maybe I'm forgetting something. But I still really like this episode. It is kind of weird that Mickey and Rose do take a bit of a back seat and they're kind of just exploring the ship the whole time. I think the original version of the script probably didn't have them in it, and then Moffat was told that he needed them to be there for it to make sense, and so he just kind of wrote a little bit of something for them to do, but they do feel like a bit of an afterthought. But I think the main story with the Doctor and Madame the Pompadour is pretty good, and I also quite like the Clockwork Droids, who we kind of got to see again later on, but we haven't really seen them properly since. And I like the reveal of kind of what they are. And obviously it also has a lot of the timey-wimey elements that Moffat started to use more and more throughout his writing, and even when he became the showrunner of the main show itself. I think this is probably the first time we really get to see a lot of those timey-wimey elements, because there isn't really any of that in his Series 1 story. So like I say, this is a really good episode, as all of Moffat's RTD era ones are, but it's probably the weakest of all of his RTD era stories, and so I don't think it quite gets into fantastic. So for now I'm going to put it in good, but I suppose it's possible at some point I might move it up to fantastic. I'll see what else I put in there in the future. Now, I think the Rise of Cyberman and the Age of Steel is a pretty interesting story, and I remember it being pretty good. I think it's cool that it all takes place on like a parallel world, and it's a very interesting way of introducing the Cybermen in the new era. And obviously, when I was watching this as a child, I had no idea about the classic version of the Cybermen and how they were introduced, or their origin story, their backstory. So knowing that now, it is a little bit like interesting, because I do kind of prefer the kind of body horror idea of the classic Cybermen, and this kind of isn't that. It does have the same kind of ideas, but they look more like just robots that have human brains in them. And I preferred when we got to see the more body horror aspects of the Cyberman, like in World Enough and Time and the Doctor Falls. So if they do come back again, I'd love to see more of that. But at the time, watching this, I do think this was a good introduction, and it was really interesting to see the parallel world and the stuff with Rose getting to see her dad again, and a parallel universe where her dad's still alive. And I think it's a pretty solid introduction for the Cybermen, like I say. But for these two stories, I think personally, I'm just going to put them in... good, as I can't really say they stand out too much from the other ones that I've put in this category. Now, The Idiot's Lantern, for me... well, I think it's a pretty cool concept and a pretty cool setting to put this story in. You know, focusing on the villain kind of being in the TVs and taking people's faces during the Queen's coronation, which was like the most viewed event on TV at that time or whatever. It's a very cool concept, but I think this episode is quite forgettable, and they don't do enough with that concept for it to be interesting. And it's definitely one of the most forgettable episodes in this series, and probably in the RTD era as a whole. So I think I'm going to put this one in bad. but it could maybe get moved up into okay if there's something else that gets put in there and I don't feel like they deserve to be in the same ones. We'll see. Okay, so the Impossible Planet and the Satan Pit, I do remember being pretty good. It's the first time we're introduced to the Ood, and the villain itself is literally like the devil, or I guess it's called the Beast in this one, which is a really interesting idea. I know Shooty has recently said that he would love to see the Beast again, or maybe it was Millie Gibson saying it, I can't remember, which, you know, I did love this villain. I think it was very cool. I don't know how they'd be able to bring him back and what way they could utilize him, but he is a very cool villain. I especially like the scenes before we even get to actually see him and he's just like possessing people, especially the scene where you can just hear his voice and he's telling the guy to not turn around. That I remember really creeping me out as a child. So I might actually put these ones both into fantastic, at least for now, but I might move them down to good if there's a few other things in fantastic that I don't think they should be in like the same level. We'll see. Okay, so now we get on to the infamous Love and Monsters, and I just want to open this by saying this episode is so overly hated on and so underrated. Like, I understand why some people don't like this, and there's definitely elements of this story that I'm not a big fan of. Like, the paving slab joke at the end does not need to be there, but at the end of the day, it's not something you can really say makes the whole episode awful. But I also am not the biggest fan of the Absorbaloff. I don't think the villain for this story needed to be so comedic and so stupid looking, because the concept of this episode itself as a Dr. Light story, I think the first Dr. Light story of the new era, is a really good idea, getting to see these normal people and how they've all come across the Doctor and they're all trying to find the Doctor, and getting to see how the Doctor impacts just normal people like Jackie and all these other people that are part of Linda is a really cool idea. I just think it could have done with having like an actual serious villain, maybe even still the Absorbaloff, or a creature that had the same kind of abilities but not played in a comedic way would have been really interesting, because the rest of the story is just great, but it is let down by its comedic points and the Absorbaloff himself. So like I say, I do get why people are not a big fan of this episode and why people were let down by this episode, but I personally still think it's really underrated and definitely overhated on, especially when the episode right after it is so much worse, which I'll get into. But for now, I'm gonna put Love and Monsters in at least good, because it's definitely better than okay. There is just a couple things to let it down. But as I was saying, I find it so weird that this is the episode that people talk about and hate on so much, when Fear Her immediately follows it and is so much worse. I'm immediately going to put Fear Her in bad, but I'm going to keep talking about it. I think the reason people like to talk about Love and Monsters more than Fear Her when they're talking about bad episodes is because there's so much more to be offended by in Love and Monsters when it comes to like the Absorbaloff and the awful jokes that are in it. And it's just a lot more interesting to talk about when talking about a bad story, whereas Fear Her is just boring. That's all there is to it. It's just so boring. So there's almost nothing to kind of talk about when talking about bad episodes with it, because you just kind of almost forget it exists, because it's just so bland. And so maybe that's why Love and Monsters gets brought up a lot more than Fear Her does. But I just think it's so unfair how hated Love and Monsters is, and Fear Her just never gets brought up. But it's definitely in the bad category. It's one of the worst episodes in the show. It might be the worst episode just underneath Orphan 55. I think it's that bad. Now, I do get that it was written very quickly because there was meant to be another episode in this series, and then they replaced it with this very quick script. But it still doesn't make up for the fact of how bad it is. Like, Midnight was, which we're going to get into later on, I'm pretty sure that was written in like a week or two. And so it is possible to write a good script quickly and cheaply, because Midnight proved that that could be done. Okay, so now we get on to the finale of Series 2, which I do really like, but I don't think I enjoy it as much as everybody else does. I think that comes down to the fact that I don't really like Series 2 as much as a lot of people also seem to. And I also am just not a big fan of the 10 Rose ship. I think Rose's characterization just really makes a massive change when it goes from Series 1 to 2, and when the Doctor changes from the 9th to 10th incarnation. Because Rose and the Doctor's relationship is so good in Series 1, and their chemistry is so good. And I'm not trying to say that Billy Piper and David Tennant's chemistry is not good in Series 2. Like, they still have good chemistry. But they basically reduce her character down, or almost do anyway, to just fancying the Doctor, when that was not at all what it was about in Series 1. And they don't do a whole lot else with it. Now, there's still some great moments in Doomsday. Like, I still love all the moments that everybody else loves. I love the Daleks and Cybermen slagging each other off. I love the moment where Rose does get separated from the Doctor and they're at the wall. And I love the bit on the beach at the end. but I just don't think those moments hit as hard for me as they do for everybody else, because I just am so irritated by Rosa's characterization in this whole series. But like I said, I do still like aspects of this episode. It's not like I hate this episode or anything. I just don't like it as much as everybody else seems to. So for me right now, I think I'm just going to put them in good, and I don't think they're going to get any higher than that. Okay, so now we're on to the second Christmas special, the first episode with Catherine Tate as Donna Noble in it, and she is so annoying in this episode. Now, I just want to make it clear, Donna Noble is probably my favorite companion of all time. This isn't me hating on Donna, but in this episode, and I think most people can agree, she is so annoying and feels like a bit of a different character. Now, I do still think it works because the whole point of Series 4 is she does she grows as a character. And so you do have to have her starting at this point. And even in this episode, she grows from the start of the episode to the end. But even when we first see her in Partners in Crime, she's a much better character already. And maybe that is because of the growth of this episode that she has in this episode. But even throughout Series 4, she grows. And she does eventually become my favourite companion. But in this episode, she is so annoying. And while this episode itself is quite fun at parts, and I do like, for example, the chase scene with the TARDIS on the motorway, there's really not much else to it that I remember enjoying. It's just kind of a fun Christmas special with a very annoying version of Donna. So I think I am going to put this one in bad. But don't think I'm hating on Donna. Like I said, she's my favourite companion. Okay, so now we're on the first episode of Series 3 and the first episode with Martha Jones, which is Smith and Jones. Now, I think this is a great introduction to Martha Jones, to the character of Martha Jones, and a great way to get Doctor and Martha together. And I think the concept of the hospital being transported onto the moon is a very cool idea, and obviously this is where we're first introduced to the Jadoon, who we get to see a lot more after this, and hopefully we're going to see them again still in the future. But besides that really cool concept and the Jadoon and getting to see the Doctor and Martha come together, that is kind of all this episode is useful for, is getting those two characters together. And so it's more about the writing of those two characters and getting to see how those characters interact with each other and their chemistry, and introducing us to the new companion, basically, which I think this episode does really well. But outside of that, there isn't a whole lot else to it. So I think for that reason, I'm just going to put this episode in good for now. And I'm realizing at the moment there is a lot of episodes in good, so I might have to move some stuff around later on, but we'll see. Okay, so the Shakespeare Code is another one of those episodes where I don't really remember much about it. I kind of forget this episode exists a lot, but it's not like bad or anything. It's just, well, I think it's just okay. So I think I'm going to immediately put this in okay, and I don't feel that bad putting it that low on the list as well, considering it's written by Gareth Roberts, who's just an awful guy. And I used to feel the same about Gridlock. I remember thinking Gridlock was a pretty just okay episode, and there wasn't a whole lot to it. It was fine. But the last time I watched it, or maybe even the last couple of times I rewatched it, it's a lot better than I remember it being. I always forget the macro are in there, and they don't really do a whole lot to the story. It's almost just like a cameo of a classic villain that I didn't even know was like a classic monster. When I first watched it as a child, I'd never heard of the macro before. But I also always just forget they're in it. But the concept is really cool. They get to basically just be in the same location the whole episode, but just redecorate each car every time. And yeah, like I said, this episode is a lot better than I remember it being. And the reveal at the end is great. We also get to see the face of Bo again, which is great, and sets up some stuff for later on in the series. So I just think this episode is a lot better than I remember it being, and I'm gonna have to put it in good. Okay, so Daleks in Manhattan and Evolution of the Daleks is one of the most forgettable Dalek stories. I think they had a pretty cool idea, a pretty cool setting. The human Dalek is an interesting idea, but I don't think it's executed very well or memorably. It's cool to see Andrew Garfield in this episode, and he's good in it. But besides that, this episode is pretty forgettable, and I think it is to the point where I do kind of want to put it in bad right now. Similarly, the Lazarus Experiment, once again, it's a very cool idea, a very cool sci-fi concept, a good idea for a monster, and I like that we get to see Martha's family, but the episode itself just isn't all that great. Besides setting up Martha's family and why they don't trust the Doctor to kind of set up the finale. So I think I'm going to also put this one in bad. Okay, now we get to the first Chris Chibnall episode of Doctor Who, 42, which for a Chibnall episode, it's not that bad actually. I think it's once again a pretty cool concept. We've got the classic Chibnall timer, like that's the whole point of this episode, is that it takes place over 42 minutes in real time, which I think is a really cool concept. I think the villain is an interesting idea, basically the sun infecting people, and especially the moment where the Doctor is infected is really scary, and Martha's basically just left to like figure it out on her own. And there's even the point where she thinks she's going to die at some point because she's heading straight for the sun in the escape pod, which I think is another great moment. But ironically, with, you know, some stuff Chibnall has said before he was even part of the show, it is a lot of just running around corridors, which is quite ironic considering that is stuff that he criticized in the past. And that is most of the episode, which I guess is a thing that happens when, you know, you set the episode on a spaceship and it's set in real time. But I do still quite like the vibe. It gives a very slasher movie vibe, which is a cool idea for a Doctor Who story. So I'm still going to put it in okay. I might even move it up to good at some point. We'll see. Okay, and now we get on to my favourite story in Doctor Who of all time, Human Nature, Family of Blood. I'll probably make a whole video about this at some point. But with that being said, I'm pretty sure Full Fat Videos has made a video that will probably cover anything that I'd say on it anyway. So if you want to check that out, I'll probably link that somewhere. But it's just such a good story. It's basically a Dr. Light story because although David Tennant is in the episode or the story quite a lot, he's not playing the Doctor, he's playing John Smith, and he plays it like it's a completely different character, which I think is great and just shows his talent. And you get to see the Doctor as if he's an actual human and how different he is from humans. And the moment where John Smith realizes he's not real and he's got to give himself up to save everyone from the Family of Blood, and he's just crying, is one of my favourite moments in Doctor Who. And I think, once again, David Tennant plays it absolutely perfectly. We also get to see a lot more of Martha in this. A lot of this series just really shows how strong of a character she is, how she often has to work on her own, especially in this one where the Doctor's basically not there to help her. Just shows how great and strong of a character she is. And the Family of Blood themselves are so creepy and so well performed by every single actor that plays them, especially Baines. They're just so creepy and eerie, and especially the fact that we don't even really get to see what they look like is just so great. And we really get to see the Doctor's dark side in this story at the end, where he just gives them basically the cruelest punishment, which seems a little bit out of character, but, you know, sometimes we get to see the Doctor's dark side like that. And at the end of the day, he is giving them what they asked for and what they wanted, and just showing them how what they wanted is not necessarily as good as they expected it to be. But another part that I love about this episode is how perfectly and subtly it sets up the finale by introducing us to the Fob Watch and the concept of the Chameleon Arch. Because when you first watch it, it seems like it's just for this story and it makes sense for this story, and you don't really expect it to show up again. But because we've seen this story, when you eventually get to the finale and you see it, we already understand what it is, and I think that's just great writing for like an overall story arc of a series, and just perfect setup and payoff. So obviously, with this being my favourite story in all of Doctor Who, it's no surprise that obviously going to put it at the very top tier. Okay, so now we get to the highest, what I believe is the highest rated episode of Doctor Who of all time, Blink, which, like I said, is the highest rated episode of all time, and I do think it's great. I maybe think it's a little bit overrated, because like I say, it isn't my favourite episode of Doctor Who, but I do see why people love it so much, and I do think it's also really good. Once again, like I said, Stephen Moffat's RTD era episodes are pretty much all great. He goes even further with the timey-wimey concept in this one. It might be the most timey-wimey story he's ever done, and I'm pretty sure where that phrase originates from. It's a great concept for a Dr. Light story, and the way we get to see him in these random videos where he can predict what everybody's saying is such a cool concept. Obviously, the Weeping Angels themselves are great. This is the episode they're the best in because, you know, the more and more we've got to see them, kind of the less interesting and mysterious they've got. So this is the Weeping Angels at their absolute best. And so, even though I say it's a little bit overrated, I still will put it in the top tier because it is still a great episode. Okay, so throughout this video, I have been putting two-parters kind of on the same tier, but that might change with this kind of three-part finale. Especially Utopia, it's kind of, I do count this as a three-parter, but Utopia is very different from the other two parts and is more of a setup for these two parts. But I still think it's great and one of the best parts of this finale. And it perfectly sets up the finale. I think Derek Jacobi as the Master is great. I know he kind of has come back for like big finishes and stuff like that for the War Master stuff, but I do hope at some point, maybe even just for like one story, for one episode, that we get to see him again on like a one-off basis, or maybe even just like some flashback scene or something, because he was great as the Master. But obviously, for the most part, we see him as Professor Yana for half an episode or the most of the episode. And then we briefly see him as the Master, and then he immediately regenerates. I think the setting of this episode is a really cool idea, just at a planet that, you know, humans have moved to at the very end of time, or end of the universe. And having the Doctor, Martha, and Jack all together is great. And obviously, like I said when I was talking about Human Nature Family of Blood, this perfectly sets up or pays off with the reveal of Professor Yana having the fob watch, and also with, you know, the "You are not alone" that the face of Bo said. I just think the Master reveal is perfectly done, and I just want to be able to experience it again for the first time, not knowing anything. So I'm kind of torn whether I want to put Utopia in Fantastic or Greatest of All Time. I might put it in Greatest of All Time for now. But as we get on to the rest of this finale story with The Sound of Drums, I'm overall a pretty big fan of this story. I like the Master, John Sims Master in this. I think the concept of him kind of working his way into being a prime minister is a really cool idea, especially the fact that we hear his name obviously throughout the whole series, which is a very subtle clue. You don't really realize it's going to be that important to the story. And the fact that by the time they've already got back to Earth, he's already prime minister and there was nothing they could do about it, I think is great. And I think especially John Sims Master and David Tennant's Doctor work really well together. And for a lot of points in this story, they do feel kind of hopeless. It's almost like we feel like there's nothing our heroes can do, and I think that's done really well. So I think I'm going to put The Sound of Drums for now in Fantastic, because I think just, you know, the Master reveal in Utopia and all that, it does top it a little bit compared to this, but I do like... Another thing I didn't mention, I like the fact that they're basically on the run and they're hiding out throughout this whole episode. I think is really cool. But yeah, I think Utopia does just top it off a little bit more. But now we get on to Last of the Time Lords, which for the most part does also work really well. I like how there's a bit of a time jump between Sound of the Drums and Last of the Time Lords with this. We get to see Martha again, having to be very independent and work on her own and be very strong. Because it is a bit of a Doctor, well, it's definitely a bit of a Doctor Light episode again, this one. Because he's like a little goblin the whole time, just in a cage, which I think is a really good idea. But the problem with this episode is I'm not a big fan of the conclusion to this episode or the solution that they come up with. I like the reveal that, you know, throughout the whole episode, we've been thinking that Martha's putting together this weapon to destroy the Master, but then it's revealed that that was just like a cover and she was actually, you know, doing something else and talking to all these people and telling them about the Doctor. I think that's a really cool idea, but the fact that it culminates in the Doctor becoming like Space Jesus at the end and scaring the Master is a little bit strange and doesn't really make much sense. Like they do give an explanation to it, but I don't think it's that much of a good justification. And the fact that the whole year or whatever it is just kind of reversed by the push of a button is a little bit of a cop out for me. So I think it does kind of let down the past couple of parts of setup to this. And also even the setup in like previous episodes like Human Nature and Family of Blood. It does let it down a little bit. But with that being said, there is still a bit at the end of this episode that I like. Not the actual conclusion and solution itself, as I just said, but I like the moment where the Master dies and the Doctor is, you know, trying to force him to regenerate and saying that he can travel with him. But the Master, because he wants to win, at least win something against the Doctor, he refuses to regenerate and dies. I think that is a really great moment. So there's obviously still some great moments in this episode, but I do think the conclusion does let it down quite a bit. So I don't think this can go any higher than good. I was debating putting it in okay, but looking at the other ones that are in okay, I think it's definitely better than that. Okay, so now we get to Voyage of the Damned. I think this is a pretty decent Christmas special. It's a lot of fun. I think the concept of the space Titanic is very cool. I like that the people on it, specifically Mr. Copper, just pretends that he knows all these things about Earth and just gets it very wrong and about Christmas. I like Astrid as a character. I think she's played pretty well by Kylie Minogue. I like how she just, you know, she's a waitress on this ship, but she really just wants to travel, and that's the reason she does it. And obviously the Doctor gets to grant her that wish, take her down to Earth for a bit when she's not meant to be there, and obviously that's great setup for trying to make her seem like she could be the next companion. And then obviously that doesn't happen because she unfortunately dies. I think the team that we get to follow through most of the episode, that most of them, eventually get killed off, are pretty good and quite likable. I mean, there's obviously a very unlikable character in it as well, but I think obviously that's intentional and done very well. And I think it's very clever that they made him one of the only ones to survive. And obviously this is the first time we get to see Bernard Cribbins as Wilf, even though he wasn't mentioned as being Donna's grandfather because he wasn't intended to be that at this time. So I think it's pretty good. I'm debating whether to put it in okay or in good. I think just because there's not a whole lot in okay, I might put it in there. No, actually, I'll put it in good. I think it is better than okay. Okay, so now we get into Partners in Crime, and this has a very similar thing to it with Smith and Jones, where the episode isn't really about, the plot of like the villains or anything like that, or about the adipose, about the aliens. It's more about the Doctor and Donna kind of coming back together, which I think is done really well, especially obviously the moment between them in the window, miming to each other and not realizing that they're being watched. Obviously that seems great, like a lot of people say, and there's some great moments between the Doctor and Donna in here, and Donna's obviously actually good in this one and not absolutely unbearable like she is in The Runaway Bride, so that helps. And like I said, she is my favorite companion, and this is where she really started to become that. But obviously, like I said, it's not really about like the plot itself and with the aliens. It's just about getting these two characters together, similar to Smith and Jones. So I don't think I can put it any higher than in good. Fires of Pompeii, however, Donna's second proper episode as the proper full-time companion, is a lot better. I think I remember used to thinking that it was just kind of an okay episode, but on recent rewatch, it's a lot more than that. Obviously, the idea of it being a fixed point and something that actually happened in real life that we know about is great because we know how it's going to end as soon as they realize what day it is and we know what's coming. But Donna obviously thinks, well, they can save people, they should stop it from happening. And obviously the Doctor tells us they can't do that because it's a fixed point in time, which she doesn't really understand the idea of those yet. And I also think it's great that they end up having to be the people that make the volcano eruption happen because they know it's got to happen somehow, but they don't realize it's going to be because they have to make it happen by defeating the villains. And so I think that twist is really good as well. But we also get to see more of Donna's character in this, and she becomes more three-dimensional of a character, where we see Catherine Tate's great performance, where she breaks down just telling the Doctor to save just one person, and they eventually obviously save Caecilius's family, which I think is just a great moment. So I think for me personally, this episode, I used to probably would have put it in maybe okay or good, but I'm definitely going to put it in fantastic. It's so much better than I used to think it was. Planet of the Ood is really similar as well. I used to think this is one of the most forgettable episodes in the series and in the RTD era as a whole. But on rewatch, it's also so much better than I remember it being. And a really good story to be able to see the Ood again, because obviously when we first see the Ood, we know again that they're slaves, they're a slave race. But it's not really touched on that much in that episode because that's not what it's about. So it's great that we decided to come back to the Ood and actually do an episode about that and show how horribly these aliens are treated by people. And so, yeah, I think this episode is a lot better than I remember it being. I probably used to would have put it in okay, but I think this time I'm going to put it in good. But it's almost at the level of fantastic. The Sontaran two-parter is fine. I don't really have a whole lot to say about it. It's cool that we get to see Martha again, and I think Martha and Donna are great together. And we get to see a lot of Wilf in this one, which I think is really good. But the overall episode itself is just okay, in my opinion. I don't have a whole lot to say about it, really. So I'm going to put it in okay. The Doctor's Daughter, similarly, I think is fine. I think it's pretty good, but I don't have a whole lot to say about it. Once again, I like that Donna and Martha are in this one together. I think they're really good together in this one, but I can't really put it any higher than okay. Again, The Unicorn and the Wasp, while I do quite like it, and I like that it's a murder mystery with Agatha Christie in it, it's obviously the right thing to do. Like, if you're going to have an episode where they go back in time to meet Agatha Christie, of course you've got to make it a murder mystery, and I think that is really good. But, like, I'm not a big fan of, like, the villain itself, the alien. It's fine, but also Catherine Tate and David Tennant's chemistry in this episode is so good. They're so funny together in this episode. And so that really does bump it up a little bit. So I think I'm going to put this one in good. And now we get on to another Stephen Moffat story in RTD era, Silence in the Library and Forest of the Dead. This is one of his best ones. We get to see River Song for the first time, and it's probably the best River Song story if we're being real, because similar to like The Weeping Angels, the more we see them, the kind of less mysterious and interesting they become. I do still like River Song in her subsequent episodes, and I do still think she's a great character, but I think this is the best that we'd seen them, especially the fact that, you know, she knows who the Doctor is already, but the Doctor has no idea who she is. It's another one of those timey-wimey Stephen Moffat concepts that I think was just such a good idea, even if we didn't end up seeing more of her outside of this episode. I think I'm going to put this two-parter in fantastic. Okay, and now for another great episode, great story. We're on midnight. As I said earlier, this is proof that you can write a quick and cheap story and still make it really good, because it ended up being one of the best episodes in the whole of Doctor Who. It's a companion-like episode. We only really see Donna at the start and end, and it all takes place in one location. It's basically a bottle episode that takes place on this like train thing that they're on, going through this planet that you can't go outside of. You can just look at it through the windows, and we never see the Midnight Entity, which I think is great. Like I was saying about the Weeping Angels, the more you know about it, the less interesting it becomes. You know, if we ever got to see it at some point, if for some reason it returned, it would absolutely have ruined this monster. And so I'm really happy that we never got to see what it looks like, what it is. We never really know why it's even doing what it's doing, and I think that is so perfect. And, you know, normally when we see the Doctor, you know, being clever and knowing all these things, it's like an advantage. Everyone will just listen to him. They'll go along with it because they need somebody to take control. But it really works against him in this episode, which I think is great, because he's put in a situation where his what he normally does actually makes people trust him even less. And I think that's perfect. There's no way I'm not putting this episode in GOAT. It's got to be up there, one of the best. Similarly, Turn Left, I'm going to put it straight in GOAT. It's one of my favorite stories of all time. I love that it's kind of like an alternate universe look. You know, what if we get to see all these things from like the past couple of series, but from an alternate universe if the Doctor had died, which I think is just a great concept for a Doctor Light story. I think Donna's great in this as the main character. We get to see Rose again. It's just another one of those perfect stories. There's no way I couldn't put this in GOAT. And now we get onto the finale of Series 4, The Stolen Earth, Journey's End, which is like the Infinity War and Endgame, basically, of Doctor Who. It's basically every companion we've seen of the new era all coming together to face off against the Daleks, invading Earth. Davros is there. It's really good. And obviously the scene where the Doctor has to erase Donna's memories of him is one of the best and most emotional moments in the whole show. And especially when, you know, he comes back and he has to talk to Wilf and Sylvia about it. It makes me cry every time, both the moment in the TARDIS where he's wiping her mind and Wilf's reaction as well. It's just so sad, and I can't help but cry at it every single time. There's no way I'm not putting these in the greatest of all time. Now we get on to the 2009 specials, starting with The Next Doctor, the Christmas special, which I think is a cool idea, especially when people knew that, you know, David Tennant was going to be leaving soon. People might have genuinely thought this was going to be who the next Doctor was, and I think that was a really clever, like, clickbait way of getting people excited about this episode and intrigued. And I think the reveal of who the character actually is at the end is very clever and very cool. The rest of the episode as a whole is just kind of fine. Not a whole lot really happens in it. The Cybermen are there but don't really do a lot. The Cyber Shades are like very strange. I don't know why they needed to be in there. And the bit where I can't even remember her name just makes a massive Cyberman robot at the end that's just stomping around Victorian London is a bit boring to me. So I don't think I can put this episode anywhere above okay. Next, we've got possibly my least favourite of the 2009 specials, Planet of the Dead. I don't think it deserves to be in bad, but there's not a whole lot to it that I really like. I almost forget it's even in there, and you probably don't even really need to watch it if you want to get a full picture for the 2009 specials. So I'm going to put it in okay, because I think it is still better than bad, but it's definitely the worst one of the 2009 specials. With that being said, now we're getting on to the best one of the 2009 specials, The Waters of Mars, which similarly to Fires of Pompeii, we get in there knowing that this is a fixed point in time. All these characters are going to die somehow, and the Doctor cannot stop that from happening, and so he tries his best to basically get out of there, but they won't let him leave. So he just kind of has to be there and watch the inevitable as all these people are about to die around him, and he starts watching them slowly get killed off by the Flood, who are great enemies. It's a really great concept to have them basically be infected by this water that as soon as one drop touches you, you're infected too. I think that's such a great idea and such a scary concept. Definitely one of the creepiest villains we've had in the show. But obviously at the end, he decides, he's the last Time Lord left. He becomes the Time Lord victorious, and he decides to save all the people that are left at the moment that he decides that he's going to change history. And he decides to change this fixed point in time because he's just got his massive ego on him, He's decided he's able to do it now, and maybe that's because he's done it once before with, as he says, little people in Fires of Pompeii. And so he just becomes really arrogant and egotistical and decides to just change time. And that moment, that scene at the end where he's explaining all this is one of the best scenes in the show. And he thinks he's doing the right thing, but he's really not. And so Adelaide shoots herself anyway because she knows she wasn't meant to live. And that just, it really brings him down to earth. He realizes he's made a big mistake and that he's not basically this god just because he's the only Time Lord left and he doesn't have anyone to answer to. He realizes that what he's doing is still wrong. He can't do that. It's just a perfect episode. There's no way. I don't really need to carry on talking about it and praising it. There's no way I'm not putting it in GOAT. The End of Time, though, David Tennant's last story as the 10th Doctor full time, is not as good as the rest of the specials in 2009. I remember loving it as a child when I was younger when it came out. I thought it was great. It's great to see the Master back, and I love that Wilf is the companion. He's my favourite companion, and this story is the only reason I'm allowed to even count him as a companion. I mean, I know I did say earlier Donna's my favourite companion, but if we can count Wilf as a companion because of this story, Wilf is my favourite companion. And if not, then he's my favourite character anyway in the show. There's no doubt about it. But besides that, the actual story itself isn't like the best one. And the regeneration, as much as I loved it at the time, I realise now is not the best one. And so I think I'm going to have to put this whole story in good. And that's it. This tier list doesn't have like other David Tennant stories that were after his era in it, like Day of the Doctor, and obviously doesn't have like Power of the Doctor in it because that doesn't really count. It's not a David Tennant story, just like how it doesn't have Parting of the Ways in it. Just because he shows up at the end because he's been regenerated into it doesn't really count. So that's every David Tennant era story ranked. I think I'm pretty happy with that. There's maybe some that I could change, move around slightly, but I think I'm going to stick to that. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you change, what your favourites are, what your least favourites are, if there's anything you disagree with. And if you want to watch something similar to this, I've actually made a tier list of every series of New Who about a year ago. So if you want to see me make more Doctor Who tier lists, I'll put that on screen now and you can click it. It's believed that they are currently working on a Doctor Who spin-off with UNIT, headed by Kate Stewart. I think this is kind of at least a very well-educated guess. In terms of writers, if she's up for it, she would be really good for this because this is going to be a little bit different from what I normally post. I'm basically experimenting with trying to start my own solo podcast, or at least it's going to be solo for now. We'll see what happens in the future. But basically, I've realized recently I've been posting a lot of really short videos that are like 2 minutes long, and I'd rather focus on my main videos that are the like actually highly edited ones that I put a lot of work into to actually be like a bit longer than just like 2 minutes where I just talk about one thing. And so I thought I'll experiment with talking about those kind of things in one podcast, like a few of them all together in one kind of podcast format. If you're watching this on YouTube, there is still going to be like a bit of editing and pictures and graphics coming up, but I'm also going to experiment with probably putting this on some podcast platforms, which if I end up doing that, I will put those in the description. I'll try to remember to put those in the description of like my normal videos as well. And obviously, as you can tell from like the start of the video and the title and thumbnail, if you're watching on YouTube, this is mostly going to be about the UNIT spin-off. But before I get into that, I first want to talk about a few other things because obviously, like I said, I'm going to go over a few things in this podcast. So I'm basically going to be going over like a few things that have happened like throughout the past month or so. I don't plan on doing this podcast like on a very regular schedule or like weekly or anything. It's more just like whenever I feel like it or whenever I've got like a few topics that I kind of don't want to put into their own individual videos because they wouldn't be long enough, but I kind of still want to get into them and my opinion on them and talk about them. And I'll also probably try and do like initial reviews or something on this format before I make like a fully like edited review, if I can anyway. That's like the idea. If not, then I'll just focus on the actual edited reviews. But if I get a chance to like do a review before getting around to doing that, an initial review, and I get time to record one of those, then I'll probably do that when it gets around to the 60th anniversary. I might try and do like a review podcast for each episode that comes out, or maybe just all of them in one podcast, and we'll see how that goes when it comes around to it. But for now, it's going to just kind of be discussions of like news and things like that. So before I get into the main topic of this podcast, which is the unit spin-off and my thoughts on it, I first want to talk about quickly the Red Nose Day special, or I guess sketch that happened during Red Nose Day, because that's something that's kind of notable that's happened fairly recently in Doctor Who. Now, I feel like a lot of people were maybe expecting quite a lot more of what we got in the special, well, in the episode, in the event. Which, you know, I was possibly thinking that maybe there'd be like a possibility of maybe like a trailer, or they play like a quick scene, or a even more specially filmed like sketch that's, you know, maybe like set in like the TARDIS, or connects somehow to the final regeneration scene of Power of the Doctor or something. But I wasn't like gonna get my hopes up and expect so much, so I wasn't really let down by it. But it was definitely like less than I was expecting that we'd get. But I'm still happy with what we got. It was still like a really fun sketch. And I think at the end of the day, what it really comes down to is, I don't think Russell was like desperately trying to make sure they get Doctor Who in Red Nose Day again, like they used to do for quite a lot of Red Nose Days back in the day. I think it's more just a coincidence that, you know, David Tennant was already hosting Red Nose Day or Comic Relief or whatever, and so they thought, oh well, we can do a funny quick sketch here where, you know, Lenny Henry regenerates into David Tennant, and then David Tennant is hosting the show from that point on. Which I think that's kind of all the thought that went into it. I don't think they were like, oh, what Doctor Who sketch can we put in here? I think it was more like, oh, David Tennant's going to be hosting, so we might as well make use of him and the fact that he's the current Doctor to do a little Doctor Who sketch. And I think it was fun what we got. It was quite a fun idea. Some nice little surprisingly good regeneration effects for a little Red Nose Day sketch. And they also used, I don't think it's like this on the YouTube version, but they did also use the regeneration music from The Power of the Doctor, which was quite a nice little reference. So I did like what we got. But one other thing before we get on to the main topic of this podcast, because it is quite a big news event at the moment and a big discussion, is the Doomsday announcement. Doctor Who Doomsday, the multimedia event, because there's obviously been quite a lot of divisive discourse, to say the least, on this topic. Now, I, for one, I'm not really that bothered about this. I think some people have severely overreacted to this, which I'll probably get into later, actually, because I probably should explain what it is first, just in case some people are not aware of it. But basically, a few days ago, there was a video posted of a ticking clock teasing for something to be announced the next day. Immediately, a lot of people kind of thought that it was going to be something related to like the 2023 specials, the 60th anniversary specials, because they don't normally tease like announcements in advance for like, you know, audios and stuff like that. And to be fair, this isn't just an audio, so it kind of makes a little bit of sense that it was a bit more of an announcement, because, you know, with Big Finish, they just kind of drop announcements. And this isn't just a Big Finish thing. Like, Big Finish are involved, I'm pretty sure. Or maybe it's BBC Sounds involved, I can't remember. But I think it's Big Finish. So it is more than just a Big Finish. So I kind of get that the announcement, why it was a little bit different to just a normal Big Finish, because it is more than that. But it did kind of get people a little bit too excited, because they immediately assumed, you know, it was going to be something for like the 2023 specials for the 60th anniversary or something. So I do get that. But immediately, like, when I saw before they actually did the real announcement and they did the little teaser, I did, like, you know, look in the replies on Twitter, and some people were immediately like, yeah, I think this is like an audio thing or whatever. So I didn't have my hopes too high, because some people kind of figured out what it was already. But then when the announcement actually came, it was through this video of the main actress, Suze Kemper, I believe it is, who I'd not actually heard of before this, on a green screen. And they're kind of, you know, appear to be not much of a budget going into this particular marketing, which I'll also get into later. And it was announced that it was basically another one of these multimedia, transmedia events, like Time Lord Victorious a couple of years ago, which personally is something I haven't got into, like, even at all. I've not even listened to or experienced any of the media from Time Lord Victorious at all yet. Like, I know of it, and I knew what it was before even Doomsday was announced, but I'd seen stuff about, but I just never dove into it. I'm not like a big Finish guy, or even that much in the expanded universe at all, besides, you know, maybe like spin-off shows, besides Class, which I did try and start at the time, but never finished. But besides like Torchwood and Surgeon Adventures and stuff. I don't get that deep into the expanded media. I've tried to get into Big Finish before, and I just don't think it's my thing. I don't think I have the attention to just have, audio that I need to listen to in the background. So it just really isn't my thing, and I think that's kind of what it comes down to. So, I think at the end of the day, when this Doomsday multimedia event kind of releases, there probably won't be much that I'll be interested in. I probably won't really check any of it out unless one of the particular things seems really interesting, or it's a particular like media or like medium that I would kind of want to dive into. I know there's like games that are going to be part of it, so maybe if some of the games look interesting, I'll kind of jump into that. But like I said, I didn't dive into any of Time Lord Victorious, and I don't know if I'll dive into this. The concept of like the story sounds really interesting, and I think the idea is that because it's set over a period of 24 hours, there's going to be 24 different kind of stories or whatever told in all these different mediums, which sounds like a really interesting idea. But like I say, it depends if any of them actually like kind of call to me or not, whether I'm going to actually listen to any of them. But back to the actual announcement trailer itself, there's been some kind of crazy reactions to it because, like I said, the budget clearly wasn't that big for this particular announcement trailer, and it's kind of led people to go a little bit crazy and immediately start hating on it just from an announcement. Like, this isn't really that reflective of what the actual like quality of the content itself is going to be. I don't think we can really judge that by now from this one green screen announcement clip. And I think a lot of people probably are more angry because they were expecting it to be something else related to like the actual show, like the actual episodes that are coming out this year, and then it wasn't. And so now they're kind of directing the fact that this teaser kind of was low budget to kind of be like saying that it's going to be bad because they were already a little bit angry because they expected it to be more than what it was. It's like I've seen some people being like, wow, this Disney budget's really going very well then. If this is, they're kind of taking it as like an indication of what the show and the quality of the show and the production values of the show is going to be under Disney, which is kind of ridiculous and insane because I don't think Disney have anything to do with this part. I'm pretty sure Disney and the Disney Plus deal and the money for that, it's all just involved in the TV, like, the actual show itself and likely the spin-offs that are actually getting made that we are obviously going to get into later. And from what I can tell, Doomsday is kind of it's going over a lot of different like mediums. From what I can tell, none of which are TV. So it's everything but TV, which is the only bit that Disney budget is covering. So it's insane that some people are kind of taking this as a sign of what it's going to be like under Disney and with Disney's budget, when this is like all of the stuff that Disney is not involved in because there's no TV involved in it at all. So I think that's a little bit insane. Going back to the reactions, some people have taken it like way too far. Fair enough, replying to the announcement, kind of saying that they don't think it looks very good. Like, you can still keep that to yourself, really. It would probably be better, but that's fair enough. But, messaging the actor themselves that's taking part in it, you've only seen them in a minute of footage that's just teasing the actual project itself, and you just kind of telling them that they can't act from just based on that 1 minute, and just whining about this thing, telling them that they should quit while they're ahead or whatever. It's kind of insane. Like, if it's not something that you seem interested in and you're like, okay, this looks a bit shit, which, like, yeah, from that teaser, the quality and the production value is not there, but we don't know that's probably not the best judge of what the actual quality of the actual content is going to be. But it's like, if that is how you feel about it, just don't check any of it out. Like, don't buy any of it, don't listen to any of it, just don't take part in any of it. You don't have to like message the actor and go crazy like at the actor themselves. Like, just don't buy it. It's as simple as that. So some people are absolutely insane, and touch grass, basically. Go outside, touch some grass, because it's just insane. But like I said, I didn't check out Time Lord Victorious. Those things aren't really for me, and you have to spend, if you want to go through like basically everything and get the whole story, you're gonna have to spend a lot of money. I think a lot of the prices for this, at least for like the audios and stuff, or like maybe it's like an audio book, I think we already like know what some of the prices are, I think, for these things, and they don't look cheap, and I already don't buy Big Finish as it is, because it's not something I'm that interested in. So like I said, unless one of the games kind of looks interesting to me, maybe I'll check that out, but I doubt I'm going to really get into this anyway, but it's not necessarily just because of the really low budget, low quality teaser that I'm not going to check it out. It's more just like, even if there was a really good teaser like the Time of Victorious teaser, I still probably wouldn't check it out because I didn't check out Time of Victorious, but we'll see when it gets to it. I know East Side Games is meant to be involved. I think that's what they're called, which are the ones that made Lost in Time, which, even though I barely understand that game, I just can't seem to get off it recently. So I know they're involved, and so they're going to make a game for it, which I have no idea what it's going to be like. But if you check out all of the published games from East Side Games, at least on the App Store, they're all basically the same as Doctor Who Lost in Time, but reskinned for like another show or something. Like there's an Office version, the Office version of it, which is just the same game but reskinned. I know they made an Always Sunny game, which I think that looked slightly different, but it's probably basically the same concept. I think they just kind of work with different like IPs and different shows and basically just reskin the same game. So I don't know how that's going to work out necessarily for Doomsday, unless the idea is that they're not actually going to make a new game for Doomsday, but they might just, they have these kind of different events that pop up in Lost in Time. So maybe it's just they're going to do like a Doomsday event in Lost in Time instead of releasing a whole new game, which I think would probably make more sense. So that's probably like, unless I've stopped playing the game by then, which I might do, that's probably like the only thing I'll check out. But like I said, I barely understand the game, and I'm like surprised that I'm still playing it, but I just can't. Whenever I've got a free chance and I don't know what to do, I just get my phone out and I go on Lost in Time and stop playing it, but I barely understand what's going on, to be honest. I'm just like pressing buttons and things are happening. I just can't get off of it. So, maybe that's like the only part of this I'll check out. It doesn't necessarily seem like something I'll be that interested in. Like I said, I didn't check out Time of Victorious. And so it's more just the fact that it's not the kind of thing that I'm interested in. It's not necessarily the fact that the teaser was so low quality. But I do agree with people about the teaser. Like, it was a pretty bad teaser, pretty low quality teaser. But I didn't get myself too overhyped with it because I kind of figured out before the actual big announcement that, this wasn't something for the actual show. And, even then, not being that interested in it, not thinking it looked that good, I didn't, go out of my way to message the people involved and tell them how shit they are, that's just insane behavior. So yeah, it's probably not something I'll check out, but I thought it's something worth mentioning because it does seem like something that, people have been talking about quite a bit, and I kind of wanted to give my opinion on that. Okay, so now it's time to actually get into the main kind of meat of this podcast that I wanted to talk about. This was going to be just a video on its own, but I realized it would probably be one of those like videos that I've been making recently where they're kind of just like 2.5 minutes long, if that. And it just kind of doesn't seem worth it to me to just kind of have it in such a short video. So I thought I'll have it as a segment in this. And it's kind of this segment's probably going to be longer than the actual video itself would be, because that's normally, I try and keep those quite concise and like heavily edited, only say things that I kind of need to say, whereas this is going to be more like a little loose discussion. I've not really got like much notes or plans to what I'm going to talk about with this. It's more just like looking at the announcement, and then I'll tell you what I think about it, why I think it could work, maybe why I think it couldn't work, but I don't think there really is any reason why I think it couldn't work, but we'll see when I get to that. From like the amount of articles and all this and some of the details, it's kind of all but confirmed at this point. Like, it's believed that they are currently working on a Doctor Who spin-off with UNIT, headed by Kate Stewart, who is, the head of UNIT. So there's been a few articles on it, but the main thing I'm going to look at here is a tweet by Matt or MXTT on Twitter. And I've seen a lot of people like sharing this one, so I assume that this tweet is like somewhat reliable, or at least a very good educated guess, if not, because a lot of people have been sharing this one around. But this is titled RTD2 Tidbit Number 3, which reads, "The UNIT spin-off is still being written. It will be executive produced by RTD, but like with Torchwood and SJA, he'll only write crucial episodes, including the pilot. Still likely for winter 2024 after Series 14 has aired its episodes, minus Christmas, obviously. Quite crucially, the aim is to bring back existing characters that haven't been seen for some time, and bringing a certain someone from another corner of the Whoniverse. The most surprising of these is Arissa Magumbo, who will have a significant promotion." There's some details here that I didn't expect to hear, and obviously take it with a pinch of salt because they don't really provide a source. They just say, like, they can't say who the source is, who the insider is that they've got this info from, because they'll risk losing their position and losing their access. But I think this is kind of at least a very well educated guess, if not actual insider information. I think basically the idea is that Series 14 is going to be somewhat at like the first half or kind of summerish time or probably springtime in 2024. And then this show is going to like tide us over until the next season in 2025. So this is going to be at the end of 2024. And I assume before the Christmas special. But what's interesting here is they say that they're going to bring back existing characters, which a lot of people have mostly speculated is going to be Martha, because obviously last we'd seen her, or I believe last we'd seen her anyway, she was working for Unit still, but we've at least seen her working for Unit before, so that would make sense. And they also, a lot of people also think that Eve Miles will come back in this show as Gwen Cooper, which I really hope is true, because I really want to see more Gwen Cooper. One of the things I was thinking before is, they could always bring back Torchwood, and in my opinion, like, I know there's some of those insane people out there that are like, Torchwood isn't Torchwood without Jack, which, they're just wrong. Like, I get it. Like, to some people, he may have been seen as like the main character and the main reason that you'd watch the show, but realistically, Gwen Cooper was the main character of Torchwood anyway. Like, we saw the whole show through her eyes. Jack was just kind of the connection point between the Doctor Who and Torchwood. He wasn't really the main character of the show. So I personally could have seen, like, if they did want to bring Torchwood back without obviously having to bring back John Barrowman because of all the controversy around that, they could have easily brought it back with like Gwen Cooper leading a new team. For me personally, like a brand new team. But if they're gonna bring her back for the Unit show as well, that would also be great. I don't know how well she'd work in Unit because it's a bit of a different like institution, but any chance to bring her back, I'm happy with. She's one of my favorite characters in the Whoniverse. Definitely a flawed character for sure, but that's what makes her one of the most interesting characters in the Whoniverse, in my opinion. So that would be cool. But then there's also, and this is not just like what other people have been speculating, but this is in this tweet itself, says Arissa Magumbo will also be returning, which is really interesting. I really like to see her because I do think she was a really good character. Again, a bit of a flawed character, just pointing guns at people and telling them to do stuff. But she only appeared in, I believe, 2 episodes. I think it was Turn Left and Planet of the Dead. I'm pretty sure those are the only ones she appeared in. So it'd be great to see her come back, because she didn't get much play in like the actual show itself. And I don't know, but I don't think she's appeared in any expanded media, at least like audios or anything. Maybe they've like written books with her in it because she doesn't have to actually show up to do the books. But I think that'd be really interesting. I like seeing some, lesser known or not as significant characters from the RTD era coming back would be really interesting, instead of just like, bringing back like Rose and stuff like that, like the main people that everybody thinks of. Trinity Wells is one that people are really hoping is going to come back, which I think will just be a great cameo and reference, and also like a bit of fan service, because it's one of those fan servicey things where it's like, it's not like bringing back David Tennant as the Doctor, which they're already doing, but it's not like something as big as that. It's just Trinity Wells, for those who don't know, is just like the American news reporter that just comes up a lot in the RTD era, and I don't think she's been seen outside of the RTD era. So that's one that would be great to see again. But that's obviously, that's not... I'm going kind of a little bit off topic here. So, I think Arissa Magumbo is kind of like... She's kind of the same sort of level as that, where it's like, a lot of people might not really know exactly who it is if you say that name. They're like, I don't know exactly who you're on about, and kind of have to be reminded. But another one that hasn't really been mentioned... I've seen some people mention it, but it's not really been mentioned, like, seriously, that I would like to see, if we're bringing back, like, some minor players from Unit, is Malcolm Taylor from Planet of the Dead. Because he's just like a funny scientist character, and it's like, if they really need like a scientist, he would be a great one to put in there, especially if they feel like they need comic relief. If it is going to be like a serious show, which I think chances are it probably will be, then maybe they might decide not to have him in there, or you could maybe even like have him be like the character we know, like the kind of comic relief, but you could even like focus some stories on him and get to see his serious side. See if who's the actor? Is it Lee Evans? You could kind of have Lee Evans come back and see if he can like do some like really serious acting and do some serious stuff with that character. I think that'd be really interesting to see from a character that we've only seen before doing comic relief. And I do feel like this show is going to be serious, which I am going to get into because I have some ideas as to what this could be like. But in terms of other characters, like, personally, I would really like to see them actually just create like a core team of brand new characters that we've kind of not seen before, like they did with Torchwood. Like, when Torchwood came out, we knew Captain Jack, and we kind of knew Tosh because she showed up in what was it, World War III Aliens of London. but that was just like because it happened to be like the same actor, and they just decided to give her the same name just as a little nod. But besides that, like we were introduced to a brand new team of people we'd never met before, which I think was really a really cool idea, really good. And not everything has to be references to things that we recognize and things that we notice. And so I think they could do the same and should do the same for this. And obviously, like the main character, like I said for Torchwood, was a brand new character. Like we saw it through the eyes of someone who wasn't even part of the team initially, and that could maybe be a route they go down with this as well. Although I do think, although I want new characters, maybe the main character should actually still be Kate, like you'd expect, because I think that would personally work a bit better. But maybe we could see it through the eyes of a brand new unit kind of recruit or whatever, like we did with Torchwood. But in terms of if they do need another character that isn't technically like a brand new character, I know there's a character called, I think he's called Sam Bishop in the unit audios, which, like I said, I don't really listen to Big Finish, so I don't know much about him. But if you bring him in as well, like that could kind of act as a similar sort of thing. Like most people aren't gonna know unless they listen to the audios or they know at least something about him. They're not really gonna know who he is. So he's gonna kind of feel like a new character to general audiences, which is good, so long as you don't have to like make it seem like we should know who he is already and listen to the Big Finishers and stuff to understand everything. But then it's also like a nice little reference for people that kind of know who he is already from the audios, and they can kind of just jump on board and they already know who this character is. But make it so that it works again for new audiences who haven't listened to those audios. Don't overload it with references. You can maybe have some little references to things that he's done in the past that are like not important to the story. And, some people who have heard the audios will be like, oh, that's from the audio, I recognize that. Whereas other people will just kind of think, oh, that's just like a little mission they went on in the past and they're just reminiscing over it, So that could be cool. But I do really want to see, especially with all the characters RTD is bringing back for his era and all these things, I do want to see most of the team, or at least some of the team, made up of brand new characters that we've never seen before. They've never been in the show before. And he kind of can be that in a way, but he isn't obviously technically a new character. It's just most people aren't really going to know who he is. But I especially want there to be at least some people in the core team that are people that haven't made an appearance before, and probably actors that we don't really know of and haven't made an appearance before, like they did with Torchwood when they first did Torchwood. So I think that would be great if they did that. Now, in terms of what the show could be like and like the tone of the show, at the moment, like police procedurals, I think is like what they technically are. They're really big in the UK right now. Like Line of Duty and Happy Valley, stuff like that, have been like massive events when they come out. Like I remember everybody was watching Line of Duty when that came out and trying to make sure they didn't get the show spoiled for them and stuff like that when it came out. I personally haven't seen it, but I remember that being a thing. And then even more recently, a lot of people have been talking about Happy Valley. So they're really big and like massive events in the UK right now. So I could really see like the unit show being like that, because those just work really well at the moment. So if this show is definitely being made, I think it would be really cool if they do basically make it in the format of these kind of police procedurals that are really big in the UK at the moment. But it's set in the Hooniverse, and instead of it being humans that they're dealing with, or normal people working for the police that are like corrupt and dealing with corruption, which I think is what Line of Duty is about. It can be focused on aliens. So if they do, it's normally about them like dealing with some human criminals in these police procedurals. Do that, but instead it's like aliens that they're dealing with, and it's kind of all stuff that the general public kind of don't really know about and don't really see. And then if they kind of want to go down like the corruption route, like they do with like Line of Duty and stuff, you could have it where it's like the Slitheen or the Shoal of the Winter Harmony Shoal, whatever it's called, infiltrating like the infiltrating unit and kind of making it corrupt. Because those are aliens that can like disguise themselves as humans, and so it's not really as easy to tell. Or even maybe just have like some humans that are working for unit, kind of being told what to do by and working for some alien organization or something, if you want to go down that corruption route. So I think basically making it like a police procedural but set in the Hooniverse would be a really cool idea. And I'm sure if this is definitely a show that they're doing, that I'm sure that's something they're thinking about, because I can't see like many other ways to do it unless you basically just do Torchwood again, but it's a unit instead of Torchwood, which is still a similar idea, but it's not really police procedural. So I think that would be really cool. Now, obviously, they said Russell's going to be basically executive producing, and I don't know if they said showrunning. I think they just said executive producing, writing the crucial episodes. But in terms of writers, you know, I remember a while ago, before RTD got announced and people were trying to figure out who the next like Doctor Who showrunner was, people were thinking Sally Wainwright, who wrote Happy Valley, which we were just talking about, one of the police procedurals. They thought that she was going to be, or could possibly be one of or the next showrunner for Doctor Who before Russell got announced. You know, if she's up for it, she would be really good for this.